They put us on something called a Global One rule, which I didn't even know, and we were like such a shoestring budget already, and we spent so much money in the Philippines, and we had, an idea of what we're going to spend in the U.S., and then there's, and I was like 23. This was my first movie. I go in, and then they're like, oh, you're on the Global One rule. That means every actor you have has to be SAG, and you have to pay them the top tier.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, so each person, I was expecting to pay like $200. It had to be $1,500 each person. And then I had to pay the SAG deposit and, all that stuff. And so it was just like thousands of dollars we didn't expect that was just going to come in just because of that rule. And the reason why they do that is because they know they can't monitor you overseas. Mm-hmm. So they're just like, well, we'll just, level you out when you're out here.
And that's, I feel like those are like the little pitfalls that if you don't know, mm-hmm. can make the difference between actually getting something in front of an audience or just collecting dust on a drive somewhere.
Yeah.
What are we going to talk about?
Film,
business, music, art,
technology.
Podcasting from Jacksonville, North Carolina, it's Backstage at TENCROW
Studios. When we started this podcast out, it was really just fucking around. Like, let's test out the equipment. Never done a podcast before. Mm-hmm. We'll just, if there's a filmmaker local, we'll talk to them.
Yeah.
But as we're doing more and more episodes of this, I think we're starting to go in a direction of where, what's the stuff that I was always curious about that I know other people are really curious about, and we can start pulling in people that do this work or, or a specific project and just kind of try to make it educational or inspirational or informative for people in the area that are wanting to do the work that we're all doing. So
are we recording already?
Yeah, we're already recording.
Oh, okay. Wow.
I mean, I don't have to include this.
Yeah. I'll tell a story. I mean, there was one guy I was working with who started a podcast. It was all about like podcasts for filmmakers, and like he was interviewing different department heads and all that. And I was like, man, this is really cool. Like, this is a really cool idea. But it turned out he was like embezzling the money for the podcast from his partner, and
oh Jesus!
So it never saw the day. And I was like,
never got off the ground.
So I'm glad that's why you guys are doing this, because this is like something that a lot of people are curious about.
Well, before I got out of the military, for like 2 years, man, I knew I wanted to get in this field. I just had no clue how to do it. I didn't know anybody. Mm-hmm. And so I listened to the Indie Film Hustle podcast. Shout out to Alex Ferrari. Listen to the Indie Film Hustle podcast like every day on my way to work.
Yeah.
And I learned so much just listening to that, like all the warnings that he gave about distribution deals, that like nightmares and ways to avoid that. Things like chain of custody.
Chain of title?
Or chain of title. Like, with stuff that a new indie filmmaker wouldn't even think about. Mm-hmm. So I was like, wow, that's really useful. I feel like we can kind of do the same thing here in Eastern North Carolina, just kind of focused on this region.
Yeah.
For folks that are trying to do this in this region.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of things, especially like dealing with unions and SAG, and there's things that you think you have in order, and then later on you find out. Like, I was shooting a low budget movie in the Philippines, and we had to come back for a week to shoot the U.S. actor scenes and kind of double it. And so, like, when we were overseas, that's where we shot like 80% of the movie. The other 20% was like a pickup days. Yeah. But that's when we had to, have all of our SAG paperwork for those actors. And then they put us on something called a Global One rule, which I didn't even know. And we were like such a shoestring budget already, and we spent so much money in the Philippines, and we had, an idea of what we're going to spend in the U.S. And then there's, and I was like 23. This was my first movie. I go in, and then they're like, oh, you're on the Global One rule. That means every actor you have has to be SAG, and you have to pay them the top tier.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, so each person, I was expecting to pay like $200. It had to be $1,500 each person. And then I had to pay the SAG deposit and, all that stuff. And so it was just like thousands of dollars we didn't expect that was just going to come in just because of that rule. And the reason why they do that is because they know they can't monitor you overseas. Mm-hmm. So they're just like, well, we'll just, level you out when you're out here.
And that's, I feel like those are like the little pitfalls that if you don't know can make the difference between actually getting something in front of an audience or just collecting dust on a drive somewhere.
Yeah.
A global, like something as small as global, if you don't even know to ask about that, like who's out there to really teach you unless they're experienced? There's so much about this that is just on the job training.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Even if you go to school for it, you know, it still feels like you're still learning everything on the job.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, even when I went to school for everything, I mean, I didn't really retain or learn most of the information until I was actually, you know, out there doing it.
Yeah. So, I guess in way of formal introductions, Ross, thanks for coming up, taking the drive. For those of you listening, sitting here with Ross Campbell, the new COO of Wasted Potential Studios. Previous company was Ark Entertainment. Ross, tell us a little bit about your background, what you do.
Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me. So I've been in the industry my whole life. I started at the age of 4 as an actor, and from there, when I went to film school, I studied the business side, and since then I've been doing producing and financing for about 15 years.
What made you decide to get into the business aspect of things?
Well, it's funny, you know, when I went to Chapman University, and I wanted to direct. I love the creative side of things. I wanted to create stories, and I wanted to make sure they happen from the ground up. I knew that I wasn't always going to be an actor, so I went into the school to try to be a director, but the program was overbooked, and so I got into a new program they just opened up, which was creative producing. And it was basically, the best of both worlds, where it was like a business degree teaching you the business of film, but also the creative side too. So
Nice.
It's like a degree on like how to get your project off the ground from the ground up.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like a super important, like most people that want to break into films is because they want to be an actor or they want to be a director.
Yeah.
Sometimes you hear people say, I want to be a producer, but without really realizing what that entails.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting that Chapman University, of all places, offers a pipeline like that.
Yeah, and it was a fresh program, so there wasn't a lot of producers in the program, which was great for me. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of guys I went to school with, they didn't, they felt a little overwhelmed because the way it would work is like the cool thing about Chapman University, they're very hands-on. So all the professors are ex-producers. They're all in the industry. So they don't just keep you just off the book, just doing papers on the project. My sophomore year there, I actually had to make a short film. And
Nice.
I was like, well, okay, so is this like a paper? And they're like, no, you have to actually, here's your script. You got to produce it. You got to make it. And what they do is they pair you with directors from the directing program, and you got to kind of hear their pitch.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like giving you real world experience.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like a speed dating thing. There's like one day where like all the producers get in a room, and they have to like sit at each table, hear a pitch, and then decide on which project they want to make. My senior year, you're supposed to do 2 shorts, and I ended up doing 7 because they didn't have enough producers, and they said, hey, who wants some extra credit? And I just wanted to do it just because I wanted the experience. And I loved it. And, it was stressful at first, but then once you kind of get it going, and you know that you have the resources from the school to just make a project, I was like, yeah, I want to make 7 of them. And one of them, won, the BAFTA, the best short film for the BAFTA, which is like the British Academy Awards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I checked out part of that short film you were telling me about, and the production value, like just on the spacesuit, like where'd you guys source that?
I can't remember, it was years ago, but we called a prop house, and they just did Argo. So they had all the stuff from Argo just out, and they just lent it all to us. We shot, and this is kind of like, this is kind of what gave me the idea of like being the scrappy filmmaker that I am. Sometimes the school will give you, the school will only give you like about $5,000 to make your short film. And then the rest is like kind of thinking on your feet, whether you got to go on like Indiegogo and try to raise the rest or talk to investors. Like, if you want to go above the $5,000 budget, you got to figure out how to do it. Some films I was able to do that. And on this one, we stayed to the $5,000. we knew we just had to make it, and it was a last minute project too. There was already another project that was, had a lot of money. The kid, I think he had a lot of good connections, and he made a really good high quality film. And the next semester ours was going to come up. For 5K, we created a deal with the prop house that did Argo. They were able to give us a lot of stuff to help us out. We shot at the director's house. We just set dressed it. We sat in his garage with a green screen, and we got the space pod from the prop house, and we just kind of shot it all in there. We shot on a Sony F65, which the school was able to provide us, so that gave it that really good quality. We ended up pulling it off, putting it together. It was just a good story, good team, good strategy, and then we won Best Short.
Hell yeah!
Yeah, so it just took everything. And so,
what's the name of that short again, so people can look it up?
Into the Silent Sea. I think it's on. You can find it on Leto.
Okay. I think I found it on YouTube as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Into the Silent Sea.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll try to remember to make it. Can you make a note of that? Into the Silent Sea. We'll just put that in the show notes.
Yeah. Good little project. It's about a Russian cosmonaut who gets lost in space during the space race, and he's just kind of floating around, and
Yeah, I mean, it was really impressive the way it played out visually, especially because it's like, and I went into it knowing that you guys, because we had talked about it before, knowing that you guys only had like a 5K budget, and then just seeing the production value is like, holy shit, this looks like something that was shot with like, a crazy production budget in a studio or something, but.
Yeah, I got to give it to the school too. I mean, they gave us a lot of resources. We worked with the visual effects department. Their students, and that way we can get all the shots in space, and the rest of it we were kind of just like ragtag filmmakers. We got our exteriors, we kind of just stole them, just driving around, popping out with the camera, and then popping the rest in with visual effects. Which kind of goes full circle with what we're doing with Wasted Potential, and our abilities with Unreal and how we can really capitalize on the films with that.
Yeah, especially with the new advancements that are coming out that Epic's doing with Unreal, like for the filmmaking side of things, it's a game changer.
Yeah, it really is.
And then even with all the advancements in AI that are now bringing Hollywood level effects to an indie budget, as long as you can work around some of the constraints. I think a lot of times people, when they think about film school, I often hear this, and there have been times I've been guilty of saying it myself, how like, well, you're not going to really get a whole lot other than like the network, the people that and internships, but there's a ton of resources that new student filmmakers have at their disposal. Even just being a student filmmaker, like places like prop houses, studios are willing to work with you and help you get a project off the ground. So I think that's huge leverage that a school provides.
Yeah, and it depends to someone. I think it depends on the school too. What I liked about Chapman, everybody was hands-on. So somebody who was going to the school who just learning how to be a good grip in electric, they had to make their own short film. It was like a requirement. Everybody had to learn how to make a short film, so that way they could see what it was like on set. And that makes it easier for an employer to hire somebody from Chapman, knowing that they weren't just studying off the book the whole time and they haven't had real world experience.
Yeah.
And on the creative producing side, it helped me tremendously. The not going the film school route, you learn a lot. And I did definitely learn a lot with the hands-on experience, like just getting out there and actually doing it. But, with my journey, like right when I got out of school, I went to a film market in Singapore. Chapman had a sister school up there. I had friends, and so that was kind of like my graduation trip.
Oh, that's cool.
And so when I went out there, one of the programs of the school is teaching how to write a good business plan and how to do a budget. So while I was out there at the market, I took a few films. Some were my friends, one was mine. And when I was meeting all these people at the market, they didn't know I was just fresh out of film school. They thought I was already like a seasoned producer just because I knew what I was talking about. I had everything prepared.
Yeah.
And if I didn't do that, it'd be a completely different story. And, that road led me to securing a job in Singapore where I worked for a company where I did finance and we did co-productions in Southeast Asia. And then my first film that I directed was something that I wrote in college. And it was just an idea I had, and all I was doing was for a project. And, I had a really good screenwriting teacher, and he helped us. Our project was to write a script for this semester, and so that was just something I had, and that was in the back of my stack of projects that I had.
Nice.
To kind of like present, and it was a faith-based film at the time. God's Not Dead was doing really well, and so when everybody was kind of going through my decks, they were like, "All right, well, what else you got?" They saw that, and they're like, "Well, hey, what's this project? Can we do this?" And I was like, "That's mine," and I'm dyslexic. I haven't touched that one since college. I'll go through it again.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And then so that's kind of like, that was my path and my way of how I got a film made. Even though I was already working for the company, all the other contacts that I made, they all wanted that project and try to change it and do something else with it. And it was a story that was close to me, and I could have sold it away to somebody and they would have completely changed the story. But the company I was working for and the mentors that I had, they really helped me to keep my hands on it and make it the way that I wanted to make it.
Yeah.
And it did really well. So,
how important would you say mentorship was on your journey so far?
tremendous.
Yeah.
Tremendous, because it's like what you said. There's things in the road that you don't see until you actually do it. And when you have those mentors that have been there before, and they can like tell you what to look out for, but also too just giving you general good life advice too. Like all the producers I worked with in this company, another reason why I liked them is they were pastors. They did a lot of philanthropy work outside of the film side too, and they had a different way of looking at the industry.
Oh, that's
yeah.
Yeah, I think I often, every time I get a chance, like when something comes up and I learn that, this result that has real impact on people's lives, or whether it's like government policy or something else, it's like, that's the power of cinema, because, people are inspired by a movie that they watched when they were a kid or something that they had seen recently. Some friends of mine that are really involved in investing and whatnot, me and Jacqueline ended up watching that movie, The Big Short, last night. I'd never seen it. I'd heard a bunch of stuff about it, but for those of you that haven't seen it, it's about the 2008 market crash, but really well done on how they took, very potentially boring subject matter, even though it impacted so many people negatively, and telling it in an entertaining way. But I couldn't help but think, like, some of these guys I know and other folks that are like at the top of their field in that industry, how many of them were inspired from this movie that came out like many years ago?
Yeah. I mean, it's like there's a graph I put in the beginning of my Ark deck, and it was something that I read. It was from Movie Critic, and it was a statistic on the amount of exposure somebody gets from like age 0 to 17. Yeah. And you look at how many hours a child can spend with their parents from all the way up to 17. It's right about here. How much time they spend at church and school, and then media in general is just through the roof. So it's just
that's a good point.
That's why I tell filmmakers, I'm like, hey, you never know what you're putting out there. Everything you're making, it's not just for a job, it's not just for a paycheck, it's not just for your own ego, it's for the world to see, and so you have a responsibility to make good media.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like, that old adage, you are what you eat, and that applies to everything, like what you consume. Yeah. So, like, people that are putting content out there or media, like, people are consuming that. That's impacting their life and their personality, even if it's on a micro level.
Yeah.
So, if somebody cares about this side of it, like, there is some level of responsibility there if you really want to think about it that way. I mean, not saying that you have to be beholden to that. Obviously, you put out whatever speaks to you, but but it is going to impact somebody one way or the other.
It is, that's why all the films that I do. I mean, I look for what the market needs. So if it's going to be a raunchy comedy that we got to make, I'll make it. But there's got to be like an underlying tone and a good message to it in the way,
Yeah.
To give people a lesson while they're watching it. So
yeah. What's the moral of the story?
Mm-hmm. Like the movie I did, Don't Suck, with Jamie Kennedy and Matt Rife. It was it's a vampire comedy. You know, it started off as it was the stand-up comedian who wrote it. He was going to be one of the writers for South Park, and he wanted to tell his life story through the eyes of a roadshow comedian. And the investor was like, the first investor wanted vampires in it, and we're like, that's not going to work. And she's like, oh well, we'll give you $300K. All right, the movie's going to have vampires in it.
We'll make it.
And so like the whole movie's about like basically like a comedian who's about to get his big Netflix shot, and he's got to go on tour, but he's got to take an opener with him. And he takes Matt Rife's character, who he thinks is just some weird kid in an improv class that thinks he's a vampire. And, the kid's super rich, so he's like, all right, well, if the kid's going to pay for everything, then I'll just take him along. And I was like, hey, he might have something with this vampire gimmick, and finds out that he is really a vampire. But, in the underlying tone of it all, with the story, it was really a father-son story because the character, lost his son. That's the reason why he's a washed-up comedian. And so, you add a little heart to every story you do.
Yeah, something that, and that's just life. Like, storytelling is just kind of a reflection of what we experience in day-to-day life.
Yeah.
But, so I know you came from LA and you've recently emigrated here to North Carolina. Can you talk a little bit about some of that journey? Like what led you to this part of the country versus staying out there where the film industry is, LA is kind of synonymous for film.
Yeah, it was one of those things where, because I spent the first part of my career, about 6 years in Singapore, doing co-productions out there, and mainly just talking to people from LA to kind of get the things we needed, like distribution or attachments to attach to these kind of films. When I was back down in LA, it did help a lot, to be in the main center of things.
Yeah.
But honestly, during COVID, even before that, we were always just kind of planning in LA, and then it all came down to where we were going to film that had the best incentives. So during COVID, we made a movie and it did really well, and we shot that in Vegas because it was a right of work state. It was more accessible during the time for us to kind of do what we needed to do to pull off a film during COVID.
Yeah.
And it always opened up my eyes. And my family's been in North Carolina for 15 years, so I was always visiting, always loving it out here, and always figuring out a way, like, how can I live here, and I got to be in LA, I got to be, where it's at. But realistically, it was like I would spend, an hour at a coffee shop in Beverly Hills, and then we would just say, like, all right, once we, lay out all the details, then we would end up in, like, Oklahoma to film the movie. And so I was like, all right, well, anything can be a Zoom call. And so, with the changes in, technology and the industry and like all the incentives coming from all these different states, it doesn't matter where you're at. You can make film anywhere that you're, where you're planted, so you just got to have the right game plan.
I almost feel like North Carolina, especially the southeastern region here, where we're at, got Wilmington, where there's a really big filmmaking hub. For a new filmmaker trying to break in, it almost seems like a blue ocean type of situation because you don't have it's not completely saturated area where like all these towns and cities are, hip to it, and film sometimes gets in the way of what they're trying to do day to day.
Not at all, no. And it's funny too because like for a while, my parents have always been trying to get me to come out to Wilmington. They're like, "Oh yeah, they're filming a lot out here," and I knew that Wilmington was a good spot, and North Carolina in general was a good spot to film. I was just telling my parents, like, nobody hires a producer, So when I got out here and I started kind of figuring out, the state and looking at more in depth. Because you can always look stuff up online. You got entertainment partners. You always check incentives and things like that. But you really got to be on the ground and talk to people to really understand the benefits of filming there. So when I actually got out here and I started talking to the commissioner, like I didn't know that North Carolina's incentive was a 25% rebate that doesn't run out.
Yeah.
Most filmmakers look at that and they think like, oh, well, the TV shows are going to scoop all that up before I even get my indie project out there.
Oh, like that there's a limited pot of money
like
for
there's
it.
an allocated amount, and it does say online that there's an allocated amount, But, I talked to Mayor Sappho and I talked to Johnny Griffin at the Film Commission office. And they said, that's just a number that we had to put up. That's what we spent last year.
Yeah.
So, we just have to put a number up there. And so it's an unlimited grant. Anybody can get it as long as they qualify. And, their only regulation is, you just don't do any weird scenes with kids. That's their only thing. I'm like, yeah, that's fine.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's fair, yeah.
Maybe, is that a challenge for some people?
I don't know. I guess so, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, being out here and seeing it all, and that's what really gave me the light bulb of starting Ark Entertainment first, because when I was going to different areas, and even when I was out here, shooting in Georgia or Kentucky, usually it's on the independent film side, it's Georgia, Kentucky. Kentucky's really trying hard to kind of get their program going, and what they're doing is they're bringing a lot of financing to bring the projects in.
Yeah.
Not saying anything bad about Kentucky or anything like that. I just was talking to some other filmmakers, and they have a hard time because they don't have the right locations that they need. They got to really cheat a lot, and they don't have the crew out there that's experienced. And so a lot of in Georgia and in Kentucky, they're flying out their crew from Wilmington.
That's interesting.
Yeah, North Carolina, we've been making films for years.
So it's the only missing ingredient here is the financing aspect.
Yeah,
is that kind of what you've found just in your time here talking to people? And
yeah, it's kind of you got to weigh out the pros and cons of every project. So, for example, a lot of people like to go to Georgia because their spending limits and caps are a lot higher. So you can spend more in Georgia and get more back. It's a 30% tax incentive. But what people don't understand is a tax incentive is, something you got to file, you got to get a lawyer, a CPA attached.
Yeah.
You got to spend a lot of money to get that money back in, so you're really getting 26% back. In North Carolina, you spend, their minimum spend that you got to do is $1.5 million, and their cap is at $28 million. So if you're coming in with a $40 million project, then yeah, you should go to Georgia. But you can make a great film for $10 million, and it's perfect for North Carolina.
Yeah.
You have all the crew here. You have all the locations here. It's very diverse. You spend a half an hour drive, you're in the beach. You spend another half hour drive, you're in the mountains. You got towns all over the place. You got great studios, people who are experienced, who've been working for years, since the 80s on these projects. And so, there is a very good infrastructure here. And so when you're coming out here and, your film can qualify, you can make a lot back. And that 25%, it's a grant. So there's no filing process. You just got to submit your audit to the commission office and, also a rough assembly so they can see that the script is the same thing that you applied for. And once they see that, they give you 25% back in cash, in a check, within a month.
Wow. So to get that rebate, you don't have all of the built-in expenses that are required to even file for it.
Nope.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's just, it's just a grant, a rebate that doesn't run out. And so, when I was doing Ark, and when it comes down to doing independent films, there's a strategy you got to run, and there's many ways you can do it. But having that where, you just get a little bit of equity to put towards the key attachments of your film. So say getting a good director attached, a good actor. If you don't already have the script, then you have to get the script, pay for the rights on that too. Mm-hmm. And really that's where your equity would go. Then once you have those in place, you can start to kind of get your pre-sale numbers from a worldwide, sales company, sales and marketing company.
That's something where you would go to AFM or one of the other international film markets.
And they're like your real estate agent for your film. They know all the buyers around the world. They know the numbers. They can give you an accurate read on best case, worst case scenario based off of your attachments like cast and director. They appraise your film basically. And with those foreign pre-sale numbers, those are the ranges that they sell to their buyers. Yeah. So then once you have that, you can go you can go straight to the distributor. They can do that for you too and close a minimum guarantee deal for you. And with that will give you a good range of how much you got to stay within your budget. So let's say they go to Lionsgate or, for example, like me, I have output deals with them. I can call them directly, find out what projects they need, give them the projects that have the attachments on them. They'll tell me, okay, well, this film with this actor and this director will give you $2 million for the U.S. And that's just to sell in the U.S. That means you can still sell overseas, or they might give you a worldwide deal buyout.
Yeah.
And that's just where negotiations come in. So if they're going to give us, $2 million for the U.S. and we know we can make another possible $2 million overseas on all these other foreign distributors,
Yeah.
cool. We make our movie for $3 million. We shoot it in North Carolina. We get 25% back on that $3 million. We only put up a certain amount of equity, maybe about 25% of the film's budget in equity to put up to get those attachments in. And then what you can do is there's debt financier companies that will actually just give you a loan for the project.
Yeah.
And then you pay them back their interest. And the equity partner is the only equity partner in the film. So if you make a Christmas movie,
So they're automatically getting their like 150% or whatever the
yeah,
return on investment's going to be for them.
Yeah, typically it's like 120%. They'll get 120% ROI, and then they get the net proceeds on that. The net proceeds work out. It's like if you were to look at 100% of shares on a film,
Yeah.
you split half of that to creatives. So you give, some points out to directors, actors, some people on the crew. And then the other half goes only to the equity financiers. So if there's an equity financier who put in 25% of a $4 million budget, they're going to see, basically 60 cents or 50 cents on every dollar made after they make their 120% ROI.
Dude, that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. This is like a master class that you're giving right now. I'm probably going to listen to this podcast several times.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I've been talking about it a lot, and it's, and that's the model that I was going to run for Ark, and that's the model that we're going to be running for Wasted Potential Studios also.
Yeah.
So Wasted Potential Studios, we talked about it on the last podcast. We're going to be a full-on interactive studio. We're going to be focusing on our game, Medieval Life Chronicles of Honora. It's going to be like an open world medieval game, but with me on it, I'm going to be directing, writing, and producing it on that side too. So I'm doing all the cinematics.
Yeah.
We're going to make it feel like a movie.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And using our capabilities in Unreal, so it's all going to be on the Unreal Engine, which is also used for movies on rear projection, LED screen backdrops, and visual effects. So we're going to have that whole capability as well too as a post-production house. And running this exact same model where we're going to take a piece of the financing and finance some of these films. And that's what I was saying about like weighing out the pros and cons about getting your project here. It does come out to the equity. So you have to have a good equity partner or a good in place to secure the projects, because when a distributor has an output deal for a project and they go out to a certain amount of producers and they'll say, we need to get this project done, so-and-so is attached. Sometimes they'll already have that in play and they just need the producer to run it and get everything going for it. The pros and cons always comes down to like, okay, well, how much money we're going to spend in this state versus this state, or should we just go overseas and just completely make Columbia look like North Carolina?
Right.
So those are the things that you got to play, because money talks, and you got to just make sure you have the best deal for the investors and the best deal for the distributors, and make sure that you can make the film. And make sure it's got a high quality asset to it. So. That's where, with that equity play, so that's what we're going to be doing, is we're not going to be spending millions of dollars on a movie, but we'll be putting in basically the seed finance to secure it.
Gotcha.
And say, yeah, we'll put in the seed financing for that. We also got a 25% rebate in place for the state. We have other programs like the RIDE program that can save money on the projects, and then we're going to bring the projects here. And then also, too, we have the infrastructure, we have the locations, and we don't have to fly anybody out of state, to come work on the film. They're already all here.
Yeah, a lot of skilled crew in this area.
Yeah, make North Carolina great again.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
So how do, speaking of that, how do you, the film tariff that is coming out now, how do you see that impacting, filmmaking, I guess, specifically here in North Carolina? Like, I feel like it's an opportunity.
I always see every panic as an opportunity. Yeah. Yeah. Especially when I was talking like during COVID, we were able to if you were able to make a movie and sell, the market didn't have that many films, you were able to sell it for more, So projects that have been shooting overseas, the tariff still has to go through. If it does go through, the way the tariff works is basically they're going to tax you 100% on what you spent overseas. So if that's your entire film budget,
it's
going to be very hard for you to make money back. So it's very hard to get a domestic deal with that tariff. The reason why, a lot of production companies overseas like to do co-productions, attach U.S. actors, is because the U.S. market is the most valuable. That, and aside from like doing something in China, which they have their own regulations and they only allow a certain amount of films. But another thing too is like Bollywood. Bollywood's always been big, but they have their own setup for that too. But on general filmmaking, you want that domestic deal.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to get the biggest chunk of your returns. And so with that being eliminated or getting 100% tax on, it's going to be detrimental. So all the producers who are trying to figure out, like I'm doing, where you're going to get your best bang for your buck and shooting where, they have to think about these things. And so when it's like, all right, we're going to be shooting overseas, but when is that tariff going to happen? If it does, right?
Right.
And if it does, are the investors going to want to take that risk on not seeing a return back or getting taxed 100%? It's more.
It's almost like the savings that you would make for shooting overseas is completely eaten up by the tariff.
Yeah. And, most people do that because of the unions, right? So we have a lot of union regulations that can also eat up costs. But, if you have the right project, you could just talk to the union reps and say, like, hey, if we can just go past the requirements, we'll still create jobs.
Yeah.
We only need about 40 people on the set. If we can, lift the requirement of having 88 people and having 2 box trucks drivers that we don't need, you can weigh those out. But people go overseas because there's no union regulations at all. Overtime rules are different. You can get away with a lot more. Yeah.
Just abuse the fuck out of people.
Yeah. And, so that's one reason why. And plus, overseas, they do have really good incentives.
Yeah. Like
Romania has a 40% tax incentive that comes back.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And in some areas, labor's a lot cheaper. So, it's hard to compete. It really is. And so that's why Trump's doing the tariff, because we are going to be losing a lot of our productions overseas.
Yeah. It's just another form of, the trade deficit, essentially. Now, is it like how it is with other industries as well? Is that also applied to film where like a foreign production company, if they shoot in the United States, they don't have to pay that tariff for having their film in the U.S. market? Is that?
Yeah, that's the way it would work. So if it's a foreign film company, they would. It wouldn't matter, because like if they were to shoot their movie, let's just say they wanted to shoot all the whole movie in Indonesia. The moment they want to try to get that domestic deal, it's going to get taxed.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's, like you said, it's a great opportunity, not just for the filmmakers here to keep jobs here, but for foreign filmmakers to shoot in the U.S.
Yeah.
So having a good game plan set up, a good area of filming like Wilmington already has and North Carolina already has.
Absolutely.
Onslow County, what you guys are doing here at TENCROW. It's going to be a huge asset for foreign filmmakers and domestic filmmakers alike.
That's what, that when that was first announced, my immediate reaction was like, man, that is great news for all of us that have studios out here. Especially places like Dark Horse and Cinespace.
Yeah.
As these production companies are going to be looking for spaces to film that may be less expensive than their counterparts in other states.
Yeah.
And especially when you take into account the rebate, you already have a resident skilled workforce in the industry around Wilmington. It's amazing. Opportunity is.
Yeah.
Make that film, guys. Now's the time.
Just go do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell people just to go do it.
Yeah. I should take my own advice, honestly.
The one I was telling you about that we shot all at Silver Dream Factory. It was just like they had a studio with standing sets. One room was a hospital, one room was a police station. And they really wanted to make a Christmas movie. And it was actually the main guy who runs the studio financed that film along with a couple other people for like $100K. And, they wrote a story that they could keep all in-house, and they made it for $100K. And, they got Eric Roberts attached just for some distribution, so they still got like some type of actor attached on it. And, they put it on what's that free Prime TV or I'll have to look it up. Cineplex, I think it's called like that.
Yeah,
Distribution
yeah.
platform and Amazon. And, when you have something that's coming out that's a Christmas film that's going to be watched every year and syndicated every year, that 100K is not that bad of a deal, big of a gamble.
Yeah, because like seasonal movies, they have much longer longevity.
Yeah.
Because there's only so much seasonal content.
Yeah.
And
it's got that evergreen effect. And, it was a good story. It was something, they didn't just do like the same Hallmark movie over and over again. It was about two parents are getting divorced and they have to keep joint custody over Christmas. And so like it was a little different, and they also added some other thrilling aspects to it, which I thought was cool. It was like a doctor and the husband was a doctor, the wife was a detective, and they also solved a drug crime together. So I was like, whoa, this is kind of different. All right.
I'll say if Eric Roberts is in it, I feel like there's got to be some level of action or suspense. I always think of him in what movie is it? The Best of the Best, where he does that scissor kick at the end.
Yeah, I mean, Eric, man, me and him actually go way back. I'll go into a little side story. So when I started acting, and when I was 4, I got a part in a movie called Pork Chop. It was like right out of the gate, I got a part in a movie, and I was playing young Johnny Depp, and Eric Roberts and Johnny Depp were like cops and detectives. It was kind of like a Batman story. So like my parents got murdered. And Eric Roberts was the detective on the scene, and he ended up mentoring me. And then, flash forward years later, it's Johnny. He's, I become Johnny Depp. Yeah. And we're both detectives, and it leads into a case that leads into like what who the case that went cold, that was the murder of my parents, right? And so, kind of goes into that. And so. I've worked with him on a few things, and his wife Eliza's really, really sweet woman, and she manages everything for him. So if you ever need him, you just reach out to her. She'll look at your project. He's really, really good with like helping out the independent filmmakers. Yeah. And because he knows the game, and he knows with his attachment that brings value. So he works with the budget and he helps out, and so
that's awesome.
He's just great energy on set.
Yeah.
And it was just funny too, because he remembered me. I told him I was like, oh yeah, I was the kid from Pork Chop. And I know he wasn't just saying that, because he remembered all the key details on why that film didn't happen. Because basically the producer died in a car crash, and then delays were happening, and then scheduling conflicts happened, and the film never happened. And so it's like, well, why don't you just go get that script and make it?
Maybe that was the whole reason for it, is
maybe
for you to connect to Eric Roberts.
But he's a great guy overall, man. I'd work with him all day.
Yeah, he seems like a pretty good dude. It's surprising, as we've gotten to know folks around here and expand our network a little bit, and people are starting to realize that we're out here. We just had folks in here yesterday that fine artists out at Oriental, and this guy Shane, he was Arnold Schwarzenegger's stunt double. He was also the body double for Van Damme in several movies. He was played one of the gladiators in Spartacus. He was in what was the other movie that? But I mean, it's surprising that you out here, even in the country, rural side of this area, there's so much talent and experience that you would never even think.
Yeah.
I mean, here in Jacksonville, this young lady, Yana Buttons, she's she's been on Hulu. She played Mike Tyson's sister in that film or that show, Mike.
Yeah.
She's been on a lot of stuff on Netflix and other places, and I mean, it's all these little pockets of talent and experience that are around here, and it seems like there's no reason that this area shouldn't be pumping out its own original IP.
Yeah.
I guess, but I guess that comes back to the financing aspect, like. There's a lot of ingredients here for independent filmmakers to really make a successful project.
Yeah.
Short of the financing, I think that's like the hard piece to get to find.
Yeah, there's the financial aspect to it, and then like I said, it's all the other pros and cons you got to weigh out. Because when a producer's coming in, and this is probably a reason why some TV shows came here and then left, they got a better deal somewhere else. So it comes down to like how much you're going to spend on the locals, the unions, production houses. Is accessible? Does it have all the equipment there that we need, or we're going to have to ship it from somewhere else? And, the financial side is the part that helps, because then it's just like, well, we're going to be putting in equity, which makes things easier on a debt finance deal.
Right.
And so that's like one of the pros that helps, tip the scales to bring it over. When it comes down to being the first equity partner on a film, you get to set the terms. You get to set the ROI, you get to set the net proceeds, but you also get to set the terms on where it needs to be filmed. And because technically that's like the biggest executive producer that's going to come on the film.
Yeah. Without the money, like nothing's happening.
Exactly.
And that's important.
Yeah. So, that's like the one major thing that like is needed. And it's tough, because a lot of people don't understand it. A lot of financiers don't understand it. So, and there's a lot of horror stories when it comes down to film finance. Talking to certain investors, I remember like somebody brought up like the Lord of the Rings, which I don't know why, because they had nothing to do with Lord of the Rings, but they just heard a story that the Tolkiens never got their money back because the studio, spent so much on print and advertising and legal fees, and they didn't get recouped back yet. And so
I guess that's where contracts are really important. Mm-hmm. The details in the little contract byline.
Yeah. And, I'll just tell them, I'm like, well, first of all, I'm not, we're not Lord of the Rings. We are independent film, production company. And, we set nowadays, now everything's on VOD. You could set your own marketing rate with your distributor. That comes down to negotiations with the minimum guarantee sometimes. And same thing with your sales team also. If they're going to be helping with the marketing side too, you give them a budget. You guys got $25K? I don't know, get some billboards, put some trailers out there. Yeah. That's all we're willing to spend on this. That sets the waterfall. So when it comes down to waterfall on paying back your investors, typically it goes deferred payment. So if there's anybody that worked for free on your film, you got to pay them first. So when money starts coming in, that goes to that person.
Yeah.
Then it's going to go to your debt financing company. So whoever gave you the loan, you got to pay that back. Then it's going to go down to the distributor's marketing paybacks, because that's kind of like a deferred payment. So that $25K in print and advertising, that's got to go to them first too. And then it goes to your equity. So there is that waterfall factor to it.
Wow, it's interesting that equity seems like it's so far back in the line. Mm-hmm. So on that note, like looking at the distributing companies or distribution companies and the marketing aspect, how do you prevent that marketing cap from bleeding over and just chewing up all the funds before your investors are able to see a return? Like, do you set a minimum cap on that expense, or how does that work?
I set a maximum cap on the expense. Okay. Yeah, so like 25, that's just a number, right? I'm just saying like 25K max is what you have for your marketing on this.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then, you weigh all that out, because another thing that investors are looking at is they think, is this movie going to be a box office hit? They think back in the old times where everything was like ticket sales.
Right.
And also, too, another reason that holds investors back is they funded a film and saw nothing out of it because either the producer didn't have a distribution deal set up, they were trying to make it saying it's going to be great, and then, X, Y, and Z happened, and, they didn't see any returns. And so, like, there's been that bad stigma towards film investments in the past. But the way to do it and the way that we're doing it is that we make sure that we have a good game plan and strategy in place. Like I'm saying, if, let's say we make a movie and, we have a domestic distributor giving us a minimum guarantee for X amount of dollars, then we have our worldwide sales numbers that accumulate. We have a safe estimate. And the minimum guarantee, once you have that is basically an IOU. So that's not like maybe you'll get $2 million for domestic distribution. Minimum meaning we're going to give you a minimum of $2 million.
Yeah.
We could give you more. So you kind of have that at least set in, And if you're going to be filming in North Carolina, you're going to get 25% back. Mm-hmm. And that on top of that $2 million. So all those like soft money options that are going to roll in, that's what gives you the idea for your game plan. So, all right, we got $2 million from this distributor. We have, 25% incentive. We can make our movie for $1.5 million, get our North Carolina tax incentive, and stay within a good, reputable range. And then the foreign sales numbers come in. Like I said, their best case, worst case scenario. It looks like they'll send you like a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Where it'll say like in Germany, you're going to make, best case 125K, worst case 50K. And then what you can do there too is if you need more financing, you can do pre-sale agreements with them where you'll just take the worst case scenario. And you'll be like, okay, well, we need 50K for post. All right, let's just sell it to Germany.
Yeah.
And, they basically give you that minimum guarantee deal, but they give you hard cash up front. And then you can use that to help fund the rest of your project.
Offset some of those costs that you plan.
Yeah.
Man, so it seems to me like investor confidence, the success of being able to pull in like repeat investors really comes down to a producer understanding, how they have to protect some of the money flow, especially as it waterfalls back to pay everybody back, like how they're protecting that so that the investors do get a return.
Yeah.
And not neglecting, setting maximum limits on these other tiers that are going to be above, those equity investors.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting.
Well, and that's, when they look at the waterfall and everything too, and some investors are like, well, I don't like the idea that, I'm getting paid back last in the waterfall. Yeah, like I said, it's not about ticket sales anymore.
Yeah.
Once you basically finish that film, you have it on your hard drive, you have all your legal paperwork ready, you give that to the distributor, they fulfill the minimum guarantee, and they give you that $2 million. That all comes in at once. You just make sure you pay back, the amounts owed, but that's $2 million coming in, so everybody gets paid back essentially at the same time. Now, there are other situations where it could be a little different. The minimum guarantee wasn't high enough. You're waiting for more foreign pre-sales to come in, or those territories all sell at different times at different markets. So that flow in with the waterfall has to be on that time schedule. But then, I always tell investors too that, financiers, that you write it off as a loss.
Mm-hmm.
You get a K-1 form. You're technically financing an LLC. Everything, it takes about 36 months to see anything on a film anyway. So that's something they have to know. That's not going to be right away.
Yeah.
Anywhere between 18 and 36 months because of, post-production and marketing.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So every year that they don't, see a return, you have to invest at a certain time during the year too, though. So it can't be in the beginning of the year. The best time to shoot a movie, if you are going to go this route, is in the fall, towards the end of the year, because then once January hits, they write off a loss. I just put in, $1 million into a film, didn't see anything back. 18 months goes by, they can write off another, you know what I mean? So.
Oh, gotcha, yeah.
And it's 181 investment, so it's tax code 181. And so there are a lot of investors out there that are like, yeah, put me last.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Oh, okay, well, that makes sense strategically then.
Yeah.
Wow, learning so much.
Yeah. And it's hopefully some future financiers watching this will,
That's what I'm hoping for that too.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, there's many ways to do it. And, so that's why I tell like the new financiers now that like the way things have changed in the markets, you see there's, you turn on your Roku and you see how many platforms there are. And, you see how many different channels there are, how many different platforms there are. Some of the major companies all have like a smaller division, Paramount Plus is part of Paramount, then you have, Tubi, and they're all kind of owned by other distributors as well too. If you go to like a distributor like Lionsgate, they're not a production company, they're a distribution company. They're the ones who put it out on those platforms, and they're the ones that give you the money for it, and they kind of take in a certain amount. But they also negotiate with you too. Like there's sometimes we'll give you a minimum guarantee and a 30% on overflow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if they make more money on a deal, they're obligated to give you 30%.
That's
on top
awesome.
of that. Yeah. So there's more money to be made there. But what we do is like we just tell we tell the financiers that, like you said, it's a big blue ocean, especially when it comes down to VOD.
Mm-hmm.
There's tons of different channels that all need content, or sorry, not content, but films, projects, movies. They need to fill their library. And so the strategy that I run is I try to figure out what they need next year.
Yeah.
So I'll call my sales companies, find out kind of what genres are needed in certain areas, and they'll also give me good advice too. So I would tell tell anybody who's thinking about making a film and distributing it, and you don't have any distribution contacts or anything like that, go to a market, meet with some sales teams. You can also call them, email them, let them know what you're doing, and they can give you good advice, like really good advice on how, because all they do is appraise value of film,
Right.
because they know their buyers. So you could just ask them, hey, I'm thinking about doing a horror movie just because it's a low budget film and horror seems to be selling a lot. But if everybody's making a horror movie and everybody has that idea,
now you're saturated in a saturated market.
exactly, nobody's going to want to buy it. They'll tell you like, oh, what we really need are thrillers. What we really need are romantic comedies. And so then that's when you look for a script or you write your own, in that genre, and you cater to the market.
Wow, so you can actually just hit these guys up and they'll tell you like what type of film they're looking for their market, and that's almost like a way to get funded for that film. If you're kind of film agnostic, you just want to make a film, you can write for that specific genre that they know is going to be sellable.
Exactly. And also too, like if you're in a certain budget range and hey, we only got $500,000 to make this movie, we need distribution, what can we do? They'll also tell you, like, based off your budget, what actors you could go for.
Wow.
And they'll tell you, like, all right, like when I first got out here, I found a script from a North Carolina local actor, and he wrote this script, and I gave it to my partner, and Tubi was looking for a project for Freddie Prinze Jr. And I was like, Freddie Prinze Jr.? Man, I haven't heard that name forever.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, Freddie. But no, it's because he did really well on a Christmas movie that was selling like crazy overseas. Like it just got big overseas.
So he was hot in that particular market.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So they said with this budget range, if you could get this actor, you have a good chance of making, good money here. And so that's why you're like, okay, well, I can't afford Mel Gibson, but I can go for somebody else because they're getting big in the TV show that I don't know about.
Yeah.
And they know these things. So they'll help you with the appraisals and who you can go for. And even if you're thinking about it, when we were doing this low budget movie during COVID, we had a chance to get Danny Trejo, and it was going to cost, a big chunk out of our budget because it was so small. And I called him up and said, like, is he worth it, or should we just try to make this thing with nobodies? And they said, no, definitely go for that. Like, and it definitely was, because that $300,000 movie turned into 1.7. So.
And then now this type of model specifically, we're talking like feature films. Now it seems like that changes a little bit when you're trying to capitalize on a short, or like this new format that's coming out with things like reel shorts, other like short form vertical content type things. How much have you dealt with that side of things?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to shorts, that's something like, honestly, like I started making shorts. That's what I started at right out of school.
Yeah.
You can win some awards. And I've always looked at shorts as like a proof of concept, something to help build your resume out as a director or an actor. Or try to get something going like a TV show, like proof of concept, basically.
Yeah.
I never saw a way to actually make good money off of shorts. So that's why, like, whenever we would get some money together, even if it was like $100K, I'd be like, let's just make a movie. But that's just mainly because of my own ignorance on that side of things. But also, too, I just understand the film side more. And, when you put together a high-quality short, I saw it as a way to be harder to make that money back, because then that proof of concept needs to become a film or series in order for that investor who gave me $100K to see his money back.
Yeah.
So things have changed, though, I got to say. I mean, just looking into like platforms like Real Shorts. Yeah. And just seeing how much money that they're making just off of these short form platforms. And I've seen it all over, too, because, being in Southeast Asia, like even about, more than 10 years ago, people were still all on their phones watching YouTube. And you see how much YouTube content makers make.
Yeah.
So that stuff is being eaten up. And, it's got that, everybody's got a short attention span too. So it captures your attention, keeps you wanting more, keeps you paying for more. And so there are these avenues. Reel Shorts is one of them. Like a studio like Angel Studios, what they did with their distribution platform, they would open up for their subscribers to finance the films.
Yeah, I remember that with Homefront.
Yeah. So you would make a short
or not Homefront, Homestead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was Homefront too. Homestead, yeah. Yeah, you would make a short film, you'd put it on their platform, and they would, have it up on the Angel Studio platform for you to watch and vote.
Mm-hmm.
And if it got a certain amount of votes, then Angel Studios would fund it using the subscribers' money.
Interesting.
So each subscriber has like a feel that they, helped contribute. They're helping contribute to the community. They're not just paying for a platform just to watch movies, but they're paying for a platform and they're helping build future filmmakers and create good stories for the world.
That's awesome. That's going back to what you said, like that seems like a really good model of like kind of filtering out from a proof of concept standpoint.
Yeah.
Like it gives Angel Studios the ability to kind of across these number of shorts that these other filmmakers have produced, like this one's doing really well. Let's kind of invest our time and money into this and kind of develop it into a fuller feature project.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, you see what like The Chosen did.
Mm-hmm.
They started off crowdfunding, and it was the biggest record-breaking crowdfunding project of all time, $11 million, I think they crowdfunded.
Yeah,
to make
that's
the
amazing.
First season. Yeah,
it's almost divine.
It is. Yeah, right. But it's just they had something that the world wanted.
Yeah,
and that showed just in the crowdfunding side of things. And when they were trying to get distribution, they were trying to get the show on all the major platforms. Nobody wanted it. They just started their own app. And because they already saw it, people want to see this thing.
Yeah.
So they started their own app. It started off as the Chosen app, and then people started flooding to it and paying to watch it. And then they ended up working with Angel Studios, and now they don't. They can go to Amazon, Netflix, wherever they want to go because they don't. Yeah. And they even started releasing in theaters because they knew that they could get some box office returns to release their episodes.
So they brought their audience with them.
Yeah.
And that's one way to do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways you can do it, and I've started noticing there's a lot of my past contacts and friends that were they were investors or they were producers. They're starting to open up their own apps and their own platforms now.
Yeah.
Because also too, you could see a value if you could get your film distributed on your own app. All that money comes to you. There's no waterfall.
Mm-hmm.
You could reap most of the profits. The con on that is the marketing side and making sure that your platform has enough projects on there, enough movies, TV shows, content in general for the audience to consume. Otherwise, you're just one project.
Do you think we're approaching a point where that area is kind of getting saturated? Like everybody's kind of has their own distribution platform. There's no one single place that the general audience can go to find, this particular thing. So, I mean, do you think there's going to be like a point where people just have some kind of fatigue and it just goes back to the old in the movie theater and on like the major streaming platforms is where everybody tends to?
Yeah, I mean, I could see it probably going that way. Nobody could know for certain, and
we live in exciting times right now, man. There's a lot of weird futuristic stuff going on.
Yeah.
I mean, even in the finance side of the house with crypto and NFTs, like you don't even hear about NFTs now, but that's still very viable.
Yeah.
Thing.
It's anything can happen. I tell people, and it's like one of those things. Like if you were to open up your own distribution platform, you just got to have a good marketing strategy. Create some good original content that people want to watch.
Yeah.
That's exclusive to your platform. And then you could just license and pay for, you can license out other filmmakers' projects and bring them on your platform so they can watch.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's where some of these places have been really successful because, like, obviously, you look at something like Prime, Amazon Prime. Mm-hmm. They got their flagship shows that really pull the audience to them, things like Fallout or The Boys, Invincible. And same with like Apple TV, what it started out with Well, the things that come to mind with Apple are shows like Ted
Yeah.
Lasso.
Yeah.
Not really sure where I was going with that, but
No. I mean,
It's-
it's you got to have your exclusive content. You know, you can only watch this on our channel.
yeah.
That's what gets people to get the subscriptions going. You know.
And then you just license additional content
Yeah.
as you can get those licensing agreements, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Netflix was the king at one point, and then Disney decided to open up their own platform, Paramount, and then they all started taking back their original IPs.
Yeah.
And then Netflix was like, all right, what do we do? And
Yeah.
They thought in their head, and they thought outside the box, and they were able to create some great original stuff. They looked at some valuable IPs, like they looked at like The Witcher, for example. All right, here's a video game that's doing really, really well. Hey,
Already has an audience.
yeah, and you know what? The gaming community, they love watching shows that are close to the game they play. They hate watching TV, you know, stuff that tries to be its own thing, but
Yeah.
you cater to the audience. They're going to watch that. So they.
But you better get it right,
Exactly, I know, right?
or the audience is going to turn on you.
yeah, you just stay close to the source material. It's easy.
Yeah.
But you know, then they started making Castlevania, Witcher, Cyberpunk. You know, they just started taking all the games. Because, you know, Disney has all of their, you know, IPs.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
So they're like, well, hey, this is something that nobody else is doing. So they started taking anime projects, other places that they knew they had an audience. And yeah. And so you can do the same thing for your own distribution platform. If you find a good comic book series or book series, something with a good IP, you can secure the rights for it, distribute on your platform. And that would be a good strategy right there, you know. I mean, Chosen, it's the Bible. So they already knew they had that audience.
Yeah. There's a lot of people reading that book.
Yeah, right. But yeah, so it's something that we're going to be exploring with Wasted Potential Studios also.
Yeah.
So like for example, we're making a documentary. We have a lot of followings from Macedonia who are watching our progress, and we're like, yeah, we'll just put it up on a channel, and you know, anybody who pays on it will put it towards a donation, and just see how that goes. But also too, with our own IP, you know, we're creating games. It's going to be its own IP. You know, we're going to hold on to that. We're going to make TV shows off of that later on, or a movie off of that later on. We're going to be working with other IPs. You know, my partner who's doing Samurai Saint. It's a true story off of a real samurai that became a Christian and saved Christians during prosecution. You know, that's a real story that people know, and that's an IP he's turning into an anime series.
You know, you see bits and pieces of that story show up too, like even in Shogun.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of there. It's sort of in the background, but that story is there.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I just, you know, as you were talking, like
Yeah.
that kind of jogged that in my head, like, oh shit, yeah.
Yeah, and
I'm
samurais.
already familiar with it.
I think samurais and ninjas are always going to be in.
They'll always be cool.
Yeah, I don't think they're ever going to dry out. But we're going to be doing the game off of that, you know. And so what we're going to be doing too is like figuring out what other projects we can do, and that's something that I'm going to be doing with the film arm is securing good IPs. You know, we started a collaboration with Jesse LaFleur.
Yeah.
Thanks to you guys for introducing us.
Of course, yeah.
And tackling that short series, you know, idea. You know, he's a professional parkour guy, and he's really well known in the stunt community. In the
He's got his
parkour
own
world.
shoe line.
He's got his own shoe line. He's got millions of followers, and so that's something where you know, we see it as a good bet to, you know, finance his project, which is going to be a short series.
Yeah.
2-minute episodes. Again, you know, he already had a really good idea with it. So like him and I vibed really well because like I was saying about saturated markets. Real Shorts is a great platform, making millions of dollars off shorts right now, but they're all kind of like Hallmark soap opera, kind of low quality, just easy productions that people are just kind of pumping out. Well, we're going to take our cinematic experience and make these shorts awesome.
Yeah,
High
exactly.
action, and tap into a different demographic that Real Shorts hasn't tapped into yet. And just capitalizing off of that, you know. And
You know how that whole thing came about was it's kind of an interesting story the way this all worked out. But so we hosted a contest in conjunction with the Jacksonville and Onslow County tourism folks. And Jesse was gonna participate in that contest, so he came up to Onslow County, you know, kind of doing some location stuff, and some stuff sort of happened that prevented him from being able to do that. But anyway, he was back up in this area dealing with the things that came up, and stopped by the studio, and we were just kind of hanging out and chatting. And he was talking about this project, and it was very similar to something that I was already thinking, just but on an Instagram angle because of music.
Yeah.
And so as he was talking about but I don't know really where I'm going to be able to find the investors and for this and things like that. The first thought that came to mind was, well, Ross, this dude is really smart on the whole financing aspect of things. So, let's pull him into this and see if we can really get this thing going. And so that's where I pulled you guys together on that Instagram DM. And
yeah.
And me and Jesse actually met through Instagram. We just kind of followed each other for a while. He's a newbie to Wilmington as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's interesting how the stars align and the universe comes together, and these things that you're wanting to do, you're putting the energy out there, and now we're starting to see it's attracting this into coming into reality.
Yeah.
And so I predict probably by the end of the year we'll all be working on that.
Yeah.
And getting it out there.
I agree 100% because, when it comes down to, like I was saying about short films, the way I was kind of seeing it, if it was going to be a proof of concept, the bet that we're going to put onto it, whether we go to a platform to sell the shorts, or we distribute it ourselves, or it becomes, we just create a really cool IP and it becomes a hit on YouTube, and we're able to create a film off of that, knowing that we have millions of people that want to watch a film like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways. There's a lot of pros to it, I feel like. And
from an interesting, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here now. So Jesse is a professional free runner, parkourist, and this short series that he's written, there's a lot of aspects of that are built into it. With the things that Wasted Potential does, I can even see this branching off into a game.
Oh yeah.
Because the action's there, the concept is there. It would be a really interesting, interactive, immersive type of media situation like that too. That is awesome.
And that's the thing. It's there's a lot of good roads to it. So that's why we see it as it's a good little warm up project for us too, because it is 28 pages.
Yeah.
So shooting that like a short, we can keep it within a reasonable budget, but also make it look amazing. And then with our capabilities in Unreal, we can add more visual effects to it. Mm-hmm. And same thing, we want to do that with all of our films. So that's why we're looking for projects that we can really advertise ourselves as a studio to work on a conservative budget and bring out a quality that makes it look bigger than it was, so.
Yeah.
And, if we do the self-distribution side of things, if we do make a film over 1.5, or it could be, that's another good thing about North Carolina is, with our new governor, he's pro-film. Mm-hmm. He's working on trying to bring those incentives down to $500K.
That's amazing.
And try to bring up that incentive from 25%. We'll see what it turns out to be, but, with him back in the film side of things, and other states, won't say which ones, are kind of dropping down on their incentives,
mm-hmm.
and with the potential 100% tax tariff on overseas filming, North Carolina is looking like it's going to be the best place to film in the very near future.
Absolutely.
So,
things are aligning. We have a state representative that's coming here to the studio probably in the next few weeks, whatever. And that's something that, we're going to talk to him about with regard to Onslow County and just, the proximity to New Hanover County and everything going on in Wilmington, even though we're an hour north of that area, it's still a very supportive corridor. You can develop and produce a whole project up here and still leverage all of the skill and talent and employ Wilmington folks in this area, and as well as kind of growing that talent here in Onslow County. You got Camp Lejeune. Mm-hmm. There's people that are PCSing or ETSing out of the military all the time that are looking to get into this industry.
Yeah.
The potential is freaking limitless here. I feel like we're at a kind of a tipping point of where, you know, luckily we're recognizing that those opportunities and capitalizing on them and making shit happen.
Yeah.
I mean, next 5 years, I mean, all of this is probably gonna be unrecognizable from where we all started.
No, I know, it's perfect timing, and so that's why, you know, what our company wants to do is to show everybody how it's done.
Yeah.
You know, and same thing with our collaboration too with TENCROW and, you know, everything that we're going to be doing. So like coming up with some like really good stories inside, you know.
We're excited. I mean, like this, like we mentioned when we were first talking, like this was part of our dream, was to, you know, have capabilities like this all here. You don't necessarily know how that's going to shake out, but then we all met.
Yeah.
And now, you know, we're kind of in this collaborative strategic partnership working together to get some of these projects off the ground. And I think it's going to do a lot of good for a lot of people that are trying to get into this space.
Yeah. And that's what we want to do. Like, you know, it's not just about Wasted Potential creating its own projects and things like that. We want, you know, like me personally, I see so much potential in everybody out here who's trying to do the same thing, and they have that hard time of just getting past that first step. You know, so just helping the filmmakers out here with that first step, because, you know, if one studio wins, we all win. You know, we all end up collaborating together. We all end up working together, and we end up building back the industry that, you know, North Carolina was. So, and, you know, right now everything is lining up for that. So,
I agree.
You know, looking for the right projects that we can collaborate on, not just finance, but help them with their visual effects, help them with the production side of things too, sales and distribution, you know, really getting these projects off the ground and really showing off the industry.
And even commercially, like outside of the commercial aspect of film, but like I'm talking when you're looking at marketing and advertising for businesses, like business to business type of relationships where, you know, you're developing commercial ads or even online ads, digital ads for folks, which is a lot of what our production company's done to this point. Just the capability of being able to leverage Unreal. Yeah. You know, the financing aspect. I mean, I guess you don't really need that on the commercial side because the company's paying you, but the quality of our productions, the production value that now is capable here. You know, I see a lot of, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. There's a lot of companies, interestingly enough, out of New York that are coming down here to film at TENCROW Studios, which is surprising to us because, like, how'd you hear about us? And, but I mean, it shows me how, like, it's almost like a validation of the proof of concept that we've tried to put together here. Yeah. And what this can do for a region like Onslow County, you know, not competitively with Wilmington, but in a supporting way, mutually supportive. I mean, I think the growth is explosive. The economic impact that this will have on the entire area is huge.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's like we're all on the same team, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, filmmakers from Wilmington, you know, they come out to Onslow and they come out to here to TENCROW Studios. You know, you guys, with your capabilities as a studio, being a one-stop shop, that make it easy for the filmmaker to get everything they need to have done here. You know, the rear projection side of things for commercials, for really anything. I mean, let's say the tariffs do go through and we have a foreign filmmaker who needs to shoot a film in North Carolina and they look around outside and they're like, oh, I don't know if this is going to look like ancient Rome.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
you pop into our LED screen, we'll show you what you can turn North Carolina into. You know, so that's another great capability that you guys have here too. And, you know, with the, you know, use of Unreal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited, man. I you know, we've talked about, the cinematics for Medieval Life, even talking about certain aspects of Born Without a Name, getting shot here, you know, parts of Jesse's project. Yeah. Like, those are all very exciting projects that are I think are really gonna show the potential of what you can do. I mean, physical resources aside, just with a group of people that are dedicated and motivated to bring this stuff into reality. Yeah. You know, you can make anything happen. Yeah. And I guess that's true everywhere, regardless of what you have available to you.
Yeah.
I mean, where there's a will, there's a way.
There is a way, and you just got to start. Just got to start and do something. So that's what we're going to plan on doing. Is once we get everything going on, getting some of these projects in the can. One idea is like we're going to see who we can distribute to with these projects. Either go through, like a platform, or go through a distributor on like the movie side of things, or we distribute it ourselves. And as long as you got a good name actor attached, somebody's going to want to watch that movie on something. Yeah. And you just got to have the marketing. So like that's another great thing about North Carolina's incentive that I think a lot of people don't see is that if you are going to get 25% back on your movie within a month of submitting your audit, or 2 months or whatever it is, you get that 25% back. And if you already allocated and had a game plan to have your entire budget shot without that incentive, that 25% is your marketing.
That's your marketing budget, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
That's awesome.
You should become a movie-making machine.
So when you think about new filmmakers that are trying to break into the industry and do something with it, is there anything on your experience that, like, is there any piece of advice that you've thought about that you think would be good for, somebody starting out in the industry that would be good for them to know?
Depends on what they're trying to do. Like trying to get out there and try to...
So I'm thinking like, let's say local filmmaker, not necessarily going to school for it or anything, but just trying to do something on their own. They got a camera, they got a group of friends that are willing to work with them and volunteer their time, but they want to get serious about it and actually get into the industry or have a shot at, like, what advice would you give to a new and upcoming filmmaker? And maybe I'm asking the wrong question. I don't know. You can help me define that, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you got enough people who have the same drive and passion to get something done, go for it, because everybody who's on the same mindset and same page, they're going to succeed. I've seen, you see it in championship teams. You see it in the workspace. It's when everybody's going to collaborate on something, you're going to make some magic. So if you do have the resources, you got some friends with a camera, even if you're going to shoot off your iPhone, just come up with a really cool story and just start making stuff. And just keep talking to people, keep meeting people, go to every networking event that you can. Because it's like I've been in, being in LA, I mean, film school helped me, being in Singapore, had to meet a whole new network of people. Being out here in North Carolina, had to meet a whole new network of people. It's, you got to be sociable, you got to be out there, you got to be networking, and, you will meet the right leads, and even one person that you don't think is going to be a good lead for networking, they will introduce you to somebody, or you help them out with one project, then you meet 4 more people on their project. It just spans from there. So, just keep talking to people and, and keep your faith. Definitely. Like, don't lose faith in yourself, because there's real power behind that.
And that gets hard, man. Something I was thinking about the other day was, on the veteran side of the house, in the military, there's a lot of resources out there for mental health. But in this industry, like, you don't really hear that talked about as much. And I mean, it's a real thing, because like, people are working on their dreams. Basically, I feel like there's probably more people getting into film because they were inspired or had a dream to do this type of work versus, well, I'm going to do this to make money. Like, I don't know that anybody really gets into film to make money. And if they do, they learn very quickly that that's not the right motivation.
Yeah.
But the mental health aspect that comes with that can be really rough. Yeah. And it's very isolating because it's such a competitive field. It's hard to know who to talk to, who you can trust with your ideas or what you're going through without, in the back of your mind wondering, well, am I giving them leverage against me? Or I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about that wrong, but have you experienced anything like that with?
Oh yeah, I have, and times do get tough, and it does weigh a lot on your mind. There's a lot of stress involved, especially when you're not sleeping that much, working on a project or trying to get things going, and it can just get very frustrating. But everything, like if I were to go back in time and change things, I would not, because they do make you stronger. They make you smarter. You know, they make you a better filmmaker. They make you a better person in general. And so you gotta stick through it. The reason why, you know, if everybody could do it, then we would, you know, the market would be overflooded with films, right? And so it's really those people who persevere and push through. It will happen, you know, even if like, you know, you get some buddies together and you make a film, you know, it's like, all right, you know, you get it out to some festivals and, you know, nothing happens with that, or you don't see any money back. You can still get discovered. You know, that film could pick up that team for another project. You know, that's something that, you know, film festivals are like NFL combines, right? You know, you show your talent, you got all the coaches there willing to pick you up for something. And so even if your film doesn't get picked up, but they can see that you have the capabilities, and you talk to another producer that needs to get a film done, and they saw what your team did, you know, it could get your start.
Like, okay, these guys can make something.
Exactly, yeah. If not, if you're just doing it from the ground up, you're still learning. You know, you can learn so much from doing one project.
Oh yeah,
so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like you know, I don't know, man. Like I think you would learn way more than in film school. You know,
I could definitely see that.
Just by making one movie. So if you like look at it, okay, you can go to film school and pay that tuition, or you put that tuition to making your own film. You know, it's money well spent.
Yeah, that should be the film school model.
Yeah.
Make movie, and then the university can make money off that movie, I guess, if that's legal. I don't know.
Yeah, I
don't know how that works.
Chapman's doing it right now. They do a program where they'll put like I think about $1 million into a project, and
that's the school funding the project.
Yeah.
So they're like the first equity investor of their own project, basically.
Yeah, and the rules to that is that you know they provide jobs only for Chapman alumni, and you know they allow the school, you know, you can use when you have $1 million into your project, and then you have access from all the equipment from the school allowing you to use and stuff, and you know you're creating jobs for people. It's a good model.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I would encourage more schools to do that.
Well, you know, that's something I appreciate, you know, with, well, that's something I admire about you specifically and other folks I met is, you know, you run into folks that kind of tend to gatekeep and hoard information like, nah, I don't want to give you all the secrets, you know, but I feel like that's counterproductive. And I don't know how far that actually gets people. And like the approach we take here is, I mean, we're willing to talk about any of this. I'll pull back the curtain on anything that we're doing here.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't mean that, and I'm not scared. Like if somebody's going to take the idea and run with it, like that's cool, because it's very rare. Like it's a lot of work.
It is.
So if somebody's willing to take on the work, I mean,
yeah,
you know, you find out very quickly that the shit's not easy.
No, it's not.
But when you're trying to navigate something fairly new, especially if you're new to the industry, and you can't seem to get the information that you need, I mean, that's where folks that are willing to share their experience with you is extremely helpful. So I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, and it all goes back to when we're talking about mentors. You know, I mean, I had great mentors that pulled back the curtain and taught me everything I know. And so it's just like, you know, you got to keep giving back.
I mean, yeah, and I feel like that just, you know, you kind of build a much stronger community that way.
Yeah.
And that's something we're trying to do with what we're setting up here. I know this is new to Onslow County, but, you know, especially with us working together and getting stuff out the door, I think there's a lot of promise coming to Eastern North Carolina with just a little pocket I know there's already a lot of things happening in Wilmington, but, you know, just a little pocket of stuff that's happening up here is going to grow.
Oh, yeah.
And the industry is going to grow, and the economy is going to grow in that direction.
Yeah.
And it's just going to start, I mean, 10 years from now, like I said, and I think this will be unrecognizable.
Yeah, I agree. And especially with the film incentives, it's just got to be, you know, that's why we just got to start getting some stuff going here.
Yeah.
And just showing people what more people learn from seeing.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Rather than just talking. So that's what we aim to do. And I'm looking forward to it.
Hell yeah. Same. Is there, Any last thoughts? Like anything we didn't talk about that you think we need to? I know Wasted Potential is doing a lot. Really excited. Like we're going to the Seed the Table event with you guys, and supporting that. So that's a pretty exciting endeavor. I don't want to talk about that too much because I don't know what reg you guys are fundraising under.
Yeah, it'll be good.
Maybe I should cut that out. I don't know. We'll talk after.
Yeah. But that's going to be very exciting, and we're having more and more investors showing up to that are going to be, it's a lot of tech involvement, a lot on the gaming side, but with the things that are happening in film, we're starting to get more interest on that too. So more people are starting to kind of see what we're seeing.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So like you said, it's going to be an interesting next 5 years.
Well, hell yeah, man. To close out, I'm going to steal something from Indie Film Hustle, but just out of curiosity, top 3 movies that influenced your career getting to this point.
Oh. Top 3 movies, man. Braveheart.
Nice.
It's got to be one of them. That's a tough one. I mean, I know I'm not alone on this one. Every filmmaker's like, hey, pick your favorite kid. That influenced my career was Facing the Giants was probably another one.
Oh, I've not seen that one.
That one stuck out to me. That was a movie made by a church who just did the same thing. They just decided, let's just make a movie together, and they made a faith-based film that did really well, and it was a football movie, and that kind of inspired me because I was just like, oh man, well they just got out and did it.
Yeah.
And here I am thinking about why I can't do it, and they just didn't even think about that.
That's a very important point you make there.
And so that was one, and then I guess Forrest Gump. I can't, I love that movie so much, and I just love the way it was made, and the message behind it. And I just like feel good movies. Feel like the world today, there's enough negativity, and you just got to make more movies to cheer people up.
Amen, brother. Yeah, I'm on board with that.
Yeah. But I'll probably think some other ones on the ride home.
I should have said this.
Yeah.
That thing you mentioned about, just seeing somebody just make it.
Yeah.
Like I'm seeing this with like James Jones up in Greenville. He's a independent filmmaker, and he's taking story and he's making them. Yeah. Darrell, here, DSS Productions right here around Jacksonville. He's out there pushing films out on Tubi and stuff, and getting paid for it. And these are like no budget movies. Like I'm talking like maybe 10, 20 grand. Yeah. Or less.
Which is actually a good thing. I mean, a lot of people think that like, oh, these movies are made for nothing. This guy can't, that on the other side of things, like studios look at that and they say, if this guy can make a movie for 10 grand, imagine what he could do if we gave him $35 million, Yeah. It's just like, so that's why I tell people, I'm like, if you guys can come up with a good story, show that you guys are capable, creative, you can think outside the box and make something for nothing, and then people see that, that's even if nothing happens with that one project that you guys are doing, it will show your capabilities as filmmakers, and it will launch your careers.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, man. I feel like that's a good point to close things out on then. Yeah. So, Ross, appreciate you coming up, brother.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Thanks for taking the drive. And, this is going to be an explosive episode, man. Like I said, I think you delivered a masterclass. So, thanks for that.
All right. Well, thanks, Mike.